To get started with our final College Readiness and Management for Adults webinar. This one's going to be focusing on life after college. I do want to introduce some new and familiar voices today who will be guiding you through the often scary aspect of navigating life after college. Today is a stacked webinar, and I'm excited to be joined by my colleagues Rachel Eckman, Jessica Rotheiser, and Jenna Gilio, who will be sharing their tips and tricks on how to deal with things like repaying student loans, thinking about and applying to grad school, building out your resume, and kind of getting your career started. I am super excited to get things going, so I'll pass it along to them.
All right. Thank you so much, Maxine, for that great introduction. Our agenda for this session today, we're going to go over 4 pretty big questions. Should I go to grad school? What makes a great resume? How can I manage my student loans? And how can I improve my financial literacy? So I'll kick it off with question 1. Should I go to grad school? So congratulations, you've graduated. You now have more big life decisions to make. Do you want to continue your education and apply for a graduate program next? Or are you ready to jump into your career? If you are considering grad school, it is a big decision. So there are a lot of different questions that you could ask yourself. First big question is grad school going to help me achieve my goals? So there are many reasons that people choose to go to grad school. Here are some of the biggest reasons. First, salary. They want to increase their salary, right? On average, people with graduate degrees see a 25% increase in their salary. Of course, this is going to depend heavily on the graduate degree and career field. So for example, this increase actually goes up to 60 to 150% for people who earn MBAs. So make sure to do your research in your field to ensure that it's going to be financially worth it for you to go on to grad school. Another reason is they want to switch careers. Maybe they've been working in a certain field and now want to pivot to a new one. Maybe they've realized that they're not passionate about the field that their degree prepared them for. Or maybe they discovered a new passion during their studies, and so now they want to pursue that path. Another big reason is career advancement. Maybe in that person's career field, in order to progress and move up in their organization, they need further education. They need new skills in order to earn that promotion. Maybe they want to build their network. In a grad program, you have lots of great opportunities to meet new people and make new connections with classmates, professors, and industry professionals. Or lastly, maybe they just want to. Many people are just passionate about learning new things and continuing to grow and develop their skills and their knowledge. So whatever your underlying reason, here are some more questions you'll want to ask yourself. First, why do I want to do this right now? Maybe, like we said with career advancement, maybe you're at a place in your career where you can't progress and you can't move forward until you earn that next degree or learn those new skills. Maybe you're not quite at that point yet and you could wait a little bit for grad school, and maybe you have other priorities in your life that you want to focus on first. So really ask yourself that, is this something that I want to do right now? Or is it something that maybe I want to do a little bit later, but definitely still do? So timing is really important. Next, what type of degree or field am I seeking? And that will lead you into where you want to study, and also if you want to go full-time or part-time. And then, of course, the all-important question, can I afford to go to grad school? Which, of course, leads into is it financially worth it for me to go to grad school? If you go through all those questions and you're like, yes, this is the right time, this is the right choice, there are going to be a lot of next steps that you'll need to take. So this is kind of the pared down, big overarching steps version. So you'll want to start by researching schools that are best for you, preparing for those grad school entrance exams, researching grants and scholarships, or seeing if an employer will contribute to your continuing education, and then of course apply. So of course that looks really simple, right? But there's a lot of different steps within those big steps. And as Maxine said, this is the last of our series of webinars for adult learners. And actually our first 3 webinars in this series dove a little bit deeper into this process from beginning to end. And also, as Maxine said, you can find these on the Tutor.com YouTube channel. So definitely recommend if grad school is something that you really are considering, especially webinars 1 and 2, they're really going to help you with those decisions and answering those questions. But wait, what happens to my loans if I go on to more school? I just finished a degree, have all these loans. What happens next? So federal undergraduate loans are going to be deferred when you go to grad school. So this means that depending on the loan type you got, interest may not accrue. And regardless of the loan type you got, you won't be required to make payments until 6 months after you graduate grad school. For loan deferment to stay active, however, you must be attending grad school at least half time. So keep that in mind as well. This process of deferment is going to be automatic for federal loans. But if you have private loans, private lenders often have their own set of rules. So if you do have those private loans and plan to go to grad school, check with your loan provider to see what options you have. If you do decide or are not yet ready to go to grad school and you're like, yep, we're going into my career first, let's jump right in, you're going to need to put your best foot forward. So I'm going to pass it over to Rachel here to talk about transitioning into the workforce and what goes into a great resume.
Thank you, Jess. Hi, everyone. I want to share a little information with you today to help get you job search ready. And I'm not going to be able to go into a lot of detail. This is more of an overview, but we do have several previous webinars on the Tutor.com YouTube page where if you feel like you have some more questions, those would be a great resource for you to go back and check out, and they'll have a lot more details. Meanwhile, let's jump right in. The current unemployment rate in this country is about 3.5%, but a lot of people don't really know what that means to them as a job seeker. There are about 5.8 million unemployed people and somewhere in the neighborhood of just under 11 million jobs. So at this point, you're probably standing there thinking, wait, if there are twice as many job openings as there are job seekers, then why are people still unemployed? Well, economists call it mismatch, and that is the disconnect between what employers are looking for and what job seekers want and are capable of. So essentially, just because the jobs are out there doesn't mean landing the right job is always easy to do. A single job posting can potentially garner hundreds of responses. The actual numbers, of course, vary a great deal across industries. For example, a job in the hospitality industry may attract around 50 applicants, whereas a Union Pacific Railroad job can receive as many as 700 applications in the first couple of days. The average in business and corporate positions is usually somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 applicants. So that means the employer will receive hundreds of resumes that they have to sift through to get to the small handful of people they want to take the time to interview, typically fewer than 10. And then, of course, they can only hire one person. What that means is that your resume is the most important tool you have to get you from that applicant pool and into the interview. The resume is your opportunity to put your best foot forward. This gives you a chance to make a great first impression, pique a company's interest, impress a hiring manager. Most importantly, it proves that you are the right candidate for the job by getting you the opportunity to go into an interview. But of course, with great power comes great responsibility. The applicant tracking system, or ATS, is designed to help employers organize and track applicants for a job opening, but that's not all it does. The ATS, the applicant tracking system, and other similar hiring management softwares help to filter resumes, to weed out unqualified candidates, and save the time of the hiring process for the personnel involved. Often up to 75% of resumes can be filtered before they ever reach the desk of a hiring manager. So it's not enough to just be qualified for a position. You also have to have a resume that can make it through that gauntlet. Every job seeker is different and every resume is unique, but there are some things that can be applied to all resumes, no matter what type of job you're looking for. If your resume is professional looking with a clean, appropriate format, you can ensure that an employer will take the time to read it. Using strong, powerful verbs to describe your professional experience and achievements will give your credentials the weight that they need to make a solid impression. Selecting keywords from the job description shows you meet the requirements of the position and ensures that you will get through multiple rounds of filtering before interviews are scheduled. Using active strategic language will set you apart from other applicants. You want to be seen as someone who goes above and beyond, not someone who just shows up. Resume length is very important. There are very few reasons that a resume should ever be longer than 2 pages. And nothing will undermine your chances of employment faster than a poorly written resume. Up to 40% of resumes get tossed for being poorly written. Spelling errors are just not something you can afford to have, and grammar is equally important. So read, reread, revise, use software, ask a friend for help, read it backwards, do whatever you need to do to ensure that there are 0 spelling and grammar errors before submitting. The person looking at your resume has likely looked at dozens, if not more, just for this one position, and who knows how many for previous positions. This means they know what they're looking for and they tend to do it very quickly. So after you make it through the ATS phase, you then have to make it past what we call an initial scan from the employer. They're going to scan through your resume for a matter of seconds, maybe a minute. And if they don't see any red flags, and they do see the basic minimum requirements that they're looking for, then your resume gets a second look. That's why keywords are so important. And it's also why you want to avoid making some very common mistakes. Screen out factors are things that, whether during the ATS scan or the initial scan from the employer, are likely to get your resume bumped from the candidate pool. These are things that may incorrectly suggest to the employer that you may be difficult to manage. Perhaps they suggest you may not be reliable or that you may not be focused in your career goals. These things don't necessarily need to be true, but again, this is your first impression. So if you have any of these, it's critical to address them and do what you can to minimize their impact. Being unemployed for 27 or more weeks can reduce the probability of you receiving a job offer by over 12% compared to unemployment for less than 5 weeks. If you've just finished school and you haven't been working during that time, but you have prior work experience to put on the resume, consider developing your education as an experience block. That way you don't have that gap in your employment dates, and that will get you through an ATS. And then of course you can address that more in detail in your cover letter. Just remember, the point of mitigating screen out factors is never to lie about your experience. It's to get you through the filtering process and into an interview where you have the chance to prove you're the best candidate for the job. So let's talk briefly about the elephant in the room for maybe not everyone here, but some of us, ageism. There are many places where implicit biases can creep into the hiring process, and age is just one of them, but it's a big one, especially in today's multi-generational workforce, with baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z all working in the same workforce, and so many people across all the generations, newly completing college, changing career paths, and looking for new opportunities. Ageism can be found at all stages of employment, from the vetting of a resume to the laying off of personnel. So look for clues. The language used in a job posting can be very telling. You may have to navigate the waters of bias in the hiring process. And although you can't change bias, you can be prepared to combat it. Just like there are subtle things that reveal an employer's potential age bias, there are also some subtle things you can do to neutralize that bias and get an interview. Your email address handle can actually reveal a lot about you. An older email address handle can show your age, and even worse, suggest that you may be slow to catch up on technology or that your knowledge might be outdated. The absolute worst one you can use is an AOL email address, followed very closely by Hotmail and Yahoo. So Gmail is your best friend, and I really recommend just using that one. If you don't have one, create a LinkedIn account and add that to your resume. Professional networking is a huge part of the job seeking process. And believe me, recruiters are checking. 90% of recruiters say they check LinkedIn before reaching out to a potential candidate. Make sure you're directing them to a professional glimpse of you, one that you can control and anticipate. And to that end, scrub the rest of your social media. Make sure it's private, appropriate, and doesn't reveal anything about you that you wouldn't want to tell them in an interview. And finally, don't put any employment history that's older than about 15 years, and remove all the dates in your resume that may reveal your age. So before you start submitting, actually before you even start writing your resume, consider your goals. Why did you go back to school? Are you looking for advancement in your current organization? Are you seeking better opportunities within your same industry at a new organization? Are you looking for a career transition to a completely new industry? Your career goals should directly inform what your resume looks like and how you structure it. You're seeking advancement with your current organization. Maybe that's a management position, some other type of promotion, a raise, whatever it is, it's the reason you went back to school. For this resume, you'll want your resume to lean most heavily on your work experience at your current organization. And then, of course, your new degree becomes the cherry on top of that. Now, that doesn't mean leave off all previous work experience altogether, but this resume isn't a first impression. So what your goal is here is to focus on reminding them of the value that you have brought and will continue to bring to the organization. If you're not employed, or if you're seeking opportunities outside of your organization, then your resume is going to be very different. You want to focus on giving the employer a full picture of your qualifications and work history, including education. But because this employer doesn't know you, this resume is your first impression. So make sure you showcase as many standout achievements as you can and include all the relevant skills for the position you're applying in your work experience summaries for your previous work experience. A career transition resume is a very specific type of resume because you need to translate all your previous experience into relevant skills in a brand new field. The goal is to show that even though your previous work experience isn't in the same field, you've picked up all the skills, education, and qualifications you need to successfully make this change. 65% of employers prefer candidates with relevant work experience, so your career transition resume needs to bridge that gap for you. Make sure you're showcasing your most relevant skills at the very top of the resume. So if that's your recent degree information, put that above your work experience. The employer needs to see at a glance that you have the necessary qualifications for the position. And if that means you need to reorganize your sections, go for it. And most importantly, avoid putting too much industry-specific detail and jargon into your previous work experience. Focus on standout achievements, universally applicable skills. You need to translate your resume into terms anyone in any industry will understand. If an employer looks at your resume and doesn't know what half of it means, they are unlikely to pursue you as a candidate. So make sure you describe the value that you're going to bring to the organization in terms that they will understand. And of course, a military crossover resume is the ultimate career transition, and they can be challenging. Some of the most common mistakes made on a military resume include the use of acronyms and military jargon, but that is not all. It's crucial when writing a military crossover resume to show clear and focused career goals. And that's a major shift from the military, where most of our career goals revolved around promotion, and there's a very standard path. So when writing your civilian resume, make sure it clearly expresses your career goals by drawing on your military experience in a way that's visibly relevant to the position for which you're applying. Not all your military experience is going to be relevant, so you need to be thoughtfully selective in that process. And that will also help you to stick to the industry standard length for your resume. Unless you're writing a federal resume, you should not exceed 2 pages. So how can you avoid the jargon and translate your military experience into civilian terms? Use the resources that are available to you. Hopefully, before you enrolled in school, you got yourself a copy of your joint service transcript to help get college credit for your military experience. And that's wonderful, but don't file that transcript away just yet, because it's still useful. It can still help you. Your JST is chock full of crossover language. You don't want to copy and paste the entire summary into your resume, but look through it, pull out those keywords and phrases that are relevant to your new career path. Things that are not necessarily military specific. They contain no jargon, and they showcase the valuable skills that you've picked up during your time in service. And then once you've finished constructing your military experience block, I always recommend asking a civilian, whether it's a friend, a colleague, someone that you met in school, to take a look at the resume before you submit it. Ask them to see if there's anything that still needs to be translated that you may have missed. If they have a question about what something means, chances are an employer is going to have a question as well. Always include a cover letter. Think of it this way. If the resume is required and the cover letter is optional, as is usually the case, and you elect to only submit a resume, then the very first thing you're telling the employer is that you are a person who will do exactly what's required and no more. Research shows that including a cover letter increases your chances of being hired by 40%, which is huge. You want to apply, if you're unemployed, apply for at least 10 jobs per week, but no more than 2 or 3 jobs a day. Application volume doesn't necessarily translate to a better outcome. Actually, applicants who apply to more than 80 jobs tend to have significantly lower probabilities of being hired than those who apply between 20 and 80 jobs. It's really about quality over quantity. Putting more effort into your resume and cover letter, tailoring them for each position, yields the best results. And finally, research the company before you go into an interview process. Nearly half of all applicants will fail a job interview because they lacked substantial knowledge about the company. Now, just because the job seeking process can be challenging doesn't mean you have to compromise what you want. Take the time to sit down and consider what's really important to you. We'd use the term work-life balance a lot, but it goes beyond that. There are 8,760 hours in a year, and a full-time employee spends 2,080 of them working. That's 25% of your life. You need to think of your employment from a holistic perspective. Now, salary is, of course, incredibly important, but compensation for work is about so much more than salary. What does your healthy work-life balance look like? Is it a great benefits package? Is it room for growth? Does it mean being able to pick your kids up from school every day? Whatever it is, make sure you're advocating for yourself once you get to the point of an offer. And don't be afraid to ask your employer about student loan debt assistance. Jenna is going to give you some wonderful information about that and so much more right now.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and good afternoon, everyone. Now, there's so much to think about when it comes to student loans, but I want to briefly touch on some of the key things that you can do to make that process just a little bit easier. Did you know that 17% of employers currently offer student loan repayment assistance? And actually another 31% have plans to do so. If you're exiting school with student loan debt, you may want to consider asking your current or prospective employers what assistance they may be able to offer you. For example, the CARES Act allows employers to pay a total of $5,250 in tax-free annual payments directly toward their employees' federal student loans through 2025. There are also employee benefits platforms like Vault that make it really easy for employers to contribute toward their employees' student loans. Vault even offers a 401k match program, which allows employers to contribute a matching dollar amount based on how much employees pay toward their student loans. Now, there's no denying that it can be intimidating to ask your current or prospective employer about contributing to your loans. So my advice is start early. Don't be afraid to ask what assistance an employer offers during the interview process. And if you already have a job, don't feel like you need to reinvent the wheel. You can actually find free professional email templates online to help you get your point across. Remember, the worst that they can say is no, but if there are repayment assistance options, you'll be glad that you asked. Tackling your student loans after graduation can feel daunting and overwhelming. So before making any decisions, start by assessing your current financial situation and consider your future career and goals. Remember, you can't get to your destination if you don't know where you're starting. So start by taking an inventory of your loans. If you have federal loans, you can log in or create your account at studentaid.gov. Keep in mind that with federal loans, as Jess previously mentioned, you may have a grace period before you need to start making payments, which is typically 6 months. Now, this can buy you some time to assess your finances, begin budgeting, and consider what strategies you'll use to manage your loan payments. And if you have private loans, you can get a free credit report to see all of your loans in one place. I highly suggest Credit Karma. Not only do they provide free credit reports on demand, but also tons of great information regarding your financial accounts, history, balances, and any new inquiries on your credit report. They also offer periodic tips and offers on lowering your interest rate, which I've personally found to be really helpful. After you've assessed your current financial situation, you can then begin prioritizing and strategizing your goals. Are you more concerned with paying off your debt as soon as possible, no matter the monthly payment? Or is it more important for you to pay as little as possible monthly and maximize your forgiveness over a longer period of time? Though there are pros and cons to both strategies, consider which one makes the most sense for you and your situation. So let's start with strategy number 1, paying off your debt as soon as possible. By paying down your balance as fast as you can save money by minimizing the interest accruing on your loans. With this strategy in mind, you can also reduce your interest rate through refinancing by shopping around for a lower rate if it helps save you money. We'll talk a little bit more about refinancing later on. Now, because we're taught to get rid of debt, strategy number 2 may seem counterintuitive. Through income-driven repayment plans, it's actually possible to save more money by paying as little as possible into your loans. If you're considering this strategy, it's important to explore different ways to lower your monthly IDR plan payments and ensure you are up to date on payments and on track for forgiveness. And finally, there's another less commonly pursued strategy to consider, which is called the federal insurance strategy. In this strategy, you keep your loans in the federal system even if it costs you more, but you're protected from any unexpected life events. Now, though this strategy might not necessarily save you money or expedite loan forgiveness, it can benefit those who are experiencing or expecting any big life changes like growing a family, losing a job, changing careers, etc. The federal borrowers who lost their jobs during the pandemic but benefited from the 0% interest and the payment freeze are an example of this federal insurance strategy in action. Regardless of the strategy you choose, it's important to remember that you don't have to pay back the full amount of loans that you initially took out. Though it can definitely feel overwhelming, there are a multitude of resources and programs available to you. I've researched many of these programs myself for my own student loans, so let's take a moment to explore a few of them. Income-driven repayment plans allow you to set your monthly loan payment at an amount that is intended to be affordable for you based on your income and the size of your family. In an IDR plan, you're required to pay a percentage of your discretionary income, and you must verify your income each year to recalculate your monthly student loan payments. Generally, IDR plans lower your student loan payments. However, if you make payments lower than the minimum amount or extend your repayment period, you actually may end up paying more money in interest over time. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that any remaining balance will qualify forgiveness at the end of the term under an IDR plan. Now, if you think that an income-driven repayment plan might be right for you, you'll need to choose one of the 4 plans that best meets your individual needs and circumstances. While all income-driven plans allow you to make a monthly payment based on your income, each plan will differ in terms of who qualifies, how much you have to pay each month, the length of the repayment period, and the types of loans that can be repaid under the plan. Your loan servicer can help you determine which plans you qualify for, and they can even direct you toward the plan with the lowest monthly payment. Again, under all 4 plans, any remaining loan balance is forgiven if your federal student loans aren't fully repaid at the end of the repayment period. Whether you will have a balance left to be forgiven at the end of your period depends on a whole number of factors, such as how quickly your income rises and how large your income is relative to your debt. And because of these factors, it's possible that you will have actually fully repaid your loan before the end of your repayment period. Depending on your career goals, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program may be another relief option for you. The PSLF program forgives the remaining balance on your direct loans after you have made 120 qualifying monthly payments under a repayment plan while working full-time for a qualifying employer. So who qualifies for PSLF? Well, to qualify, you must first be employed by a U.S., federal, state, local, or tribal government or not-for-profit organization, work full-time for that agency or organization, have direct loans and repay your loans under an income-driven repayment plan, and make 120 qualifying payments. Now, it's important to note that because you must make 120 qualifying payments, it will take at least 10 years before you can qualify for public service loan forgiveness. Lowering your student loan interest rate can reduce your monthly payment and can potentially help you pay them down faster. So let's explore a few strategies you might use to lower your interest rate. The first option is to refinance. When you refinance, you trade your existing loans for a new private loan, ideally with a lower interest rate. Your new lender will pay off your old lenders and you'll make payments to the new one going forward. Your interest rate will largely depend on your credit. In most cases, the better your financial situation, the lower the interest rate you'll likely be offered. Now, keep in mind that refinancing probably won't be a good option for you if you want to take advantage of public service loan forgiveness or an income-driven repayment plan, because you'll lose access to those programs by refinancing your federal loans. If you think refinancing might be a good option for you, you can start by comparing student loan refinance companies to find the lowest rate that you qualify for. A few resources that I've used and would encourage you to check out are NerdWallet, which offers information on trends and average interest rates, as well as compares refinancing companies. And another resource is Nelnet, which is a loan servicer that provides tons and tons of resources on repayment, interest freezes, forgiveness information, and even how to read your student loan financial statements, which can be trickier than it sounds. Another way that you can lower your interest rate is by opting into automatic payments. Federal loans and many private lenders offer a discount when you elect to have your payments automatically deducted from your bank account. Simply contact your loan servicer and ask whether the discount is available to you. Automating payments can also help ensure your payments are made on time, which will help boost your credit and free up space on your to-do list. Some lenders also offer loyalty discounts in addition to the ACH discount. To qualify for a loyalty discount, you typically need to have an eligible account with the lender at the time that you receive your loan. And again, it's always a good idea to contact your loan servicer to ask whether this option is available for you. So now that you've considered refinancing and contacted your servicer to ask what discounts might be available, what else can you do to lower your interest rate? Well, one option is to direct your extra payments toward your loans with the highest interest rates to pay them down first. Now, this doesn't mean neglecting your other loans, but simply paying the minimum amount to avoid defaulting. Another option is to stick to the standard repayment plan. With the standard federal repayment plan, your loan and the interest it's accrued will be paid off after 10 years. So while income-driven repayment plans may sound appealing because they can lower your monthly payment, they can also increase the total amount of interest you'll pay over time. And finally, this last one definitely isn't for everyone, but if at all possible, budgeting to pay more than the minimum amount due on your student loans can help you pay them off early and save money on interest. So if you're able to make more than the minimum payment, be sure to ask your lender or federal student loan servicer to apply the extra payments to your current balance rather than to your next payment. Managing your student loans is no small feat. It requires a lot of planning, goal setting, and time. Remember, there are a lot of options to consider, but you can customize your plan to meet your individual needs. So take the time to explore resources like Credit Karma, Nelnet, and even the Student Aid Government website to discover which strategies and plans make the most sense for you and your circumstances and plans. And never be afraid to ask. There's no denying that student loans are a heavy burden to carry, but you don't have to bear them alone. Though it can be uncomfortable to discuss your finances with employers, you won't know what assistance they can offer you unless you take the leap and ask. Your loan servicer is also a resource, and they should be available to answer your questions and talk you through your options. And finally, begin with the end in mind. Before you make a plan to tackle your loans, consider your short and long-term goals. Where do you hope to be in 5, 10, even 15 years from now? Is there a dream career you're working towards? Do you have plans to start a family? Or maybe you have goals to travel or relocate. These are all questions to ask yourself, as they can help inform what decisions you'll need to make in terms of paying off your loans. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jess. She's going to share some additional personal finance tips to help you plan for the future and ensure you're headed in the right direction and on track to reach your goals.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenna. All right, so personal finance. The first thing that you'll want to do when making a plan for your finances is to plan your budget. So this word budget, like the word diet, often has a negative connotation, right? I'm on a budget or I'm on a diet. But whether we plan them out or not, everything we eat and drink is our diet, and everything we earn, spend, or save is our budget. But for both of these things to be healthy, it helps to plan. So for budgeting, one method that it's definitely very much an ideal and maybe not realistic right now for you, but something maybe to strive for, is the 50-20-30 method. So in this method, you delegate 50% of your earnings towards rent, mortgage payments, debt payments, food, utilities, insurance, car payments, anything that is a need. And then you would delegate 20% towards saving and investing, contributing to your 401k, building an emergency fund, or creating other sinking funds, other things that you want to save for. And the remaining 30% then goes to things that you want to do, going out to eat with a friend during the week, going on a trip, shopping, those kinds of things. So ultimately, you'll want to work look at what works for you based on your income and your personal financial goals, and you can adjust the amount going into each of these buckets accordingly. So for example, perhaps like Jenna said, you want to work to aggressively pay off your debts. So maybe you'll reduce your want spending and allocate that additional money towards the principal of your loans, towards paying those down faster. Whatever your goals are, you'll want to make sure that you're regularly analyzing your spending and reallocating your earnings where necessary. One tip that I have, one recommendation is utilizing high yield savings accounts rather than traditional savings accounts. So because these high yield savings accounts come from banks that mostly operate online, there's less overhead cost for the bank, and you'll see that as a much higher interest rate. So for example, I used to have a traditional savings account and my interest was 0.01%. I made pennies a year. And I recently switched to a high yield savings account. My interest rate is well over 2%. So that means that I'm making 200 times plus more interest with a high yield savings account than I was with a traditional savings account. These accounts are really great for any savings goals that you have. Again, building those emergency funds, saving to buy a car, saving for a trip. Maybe you're saving up for a down payment. And now this big scary number. The average American has a debt balance of $96,371. Whew. Student loans, car loans, credit card debt, sometimes it seems never ending. Debt can be extremely overwhelming, and you may not know where to start with it. There are many methods for paying down debt. I'm going to share with you two of the most popular, and those are the AVALANCHE method and the SNOWBALL method. So in the AVALANCHE method, you start by paying off the highest interest rate debt, and then you roll over the amount that you were paying to the next highest interest rate debt. Of course, you always want to make sure that you're keeping up with the minimum payments on all debts, but if you have extra that you're contributing towards your debt, it should be going towards your highest rate debt first under the AVALANCHE method. So this method can help save you money along the way by reducing the amount of interest that accrues. But it can take time and definitely requires a little bit of patience. So if you're someone that prefers to see progress a little more quickly, you could try the SNOWBALL method. So in this debt method, you start by putting your extra money towards your smallest debts first. And then you take the money you're putting towards that smallest debt payment and roll it onto your next smallest payment. So in this method, your payment amount increases or snowballs as you move through your debts. It's always a rewarding feeling to pay off a debt, and you'll feel that more quickly with this snowball method. Again, regardless of what debt method you choose, make sure that you're paying at least the minimum payment on all of your debts before allocating additional funds towards whatever goal you have. And even if you do have debt, it's important to start saving for retirement as early as possible. So one of the best ways to do that is taking advantage of employer-sponsored retirement programs like 401k or 403b for nonprofit organizations. Many employers will offer a match program with this. So for example, they might match your contributions up to 3% of your income. This means that if you designate 3% of your income towards your 401k, your employer will contribute an equal amount, giving you a total of 6% of your income invested into this account. Both 401k and 403b accounts are tax deferred. So that means that contributions are taken before you pay taxes. So you'll pay taxes on them when you withdraw at retirement age. Each year there is a limit on how much you can contribute to this account. So for 2022, this limit is $20,500. And if you're over the age of 50, you can contribute a little bit extra, and that limit is $27,000. So definitely a good amount that you can contribute towards your retirement. You also have the option to contribute to an IRA, an individual retirement account. And there are many different types of IRA accounts. These are two of the most popular, traditional and Roth. Traditional IRAs, similar to 401ks, are tax deferred. So pre-tax contributions and then withdrawals are taxed at retirement age. Roth IRAs work in the opposite way. So your contributions are made after you pay taxes, so your withdrawals will not be taxed. So in 2022, the contribution limit for IRAs is 6,000 combined, or 7,000 if you're over 50. So this means that if you have both accounts, you can contribute a total of that amount across those accounts. And lastly, you have your brokerage account. So this is where you can individually buy and sell stocks, options, and more. You can work with a stockbroker with one of these accounts, or you can choose to individually manage your own. There are no contribution limits in this type of account, but there are also no tax advantages. So overall, for retirement, you should focus first on meeting your employer's 401k match. So again, if they'll match 3%, you should contribute 3%. And then if you find that you have more to invest, you can work your way down this list. So trying to max out your 401k, then working to contribute to an IRA, and then you could open a brokerage account if you're interested in trading more. So no matter what your financial goals are, almost all financial institutions operate online, and most send us unsolicited offers in the mail as well. I'm sure you know every time you open your mailbox, there's a new thing from Chase Bank or Discover Bank, right? With so much data out there, we need to be cautious about protecting our identities. So my first tip, always use strong passwords. Your passwords should be long and varied between accounts. Make sure to utilize password managers to help you remember your login information for all of your different accounts. LastPass is a great password manager that I use, but Google and Apple also have those built-in password managers as well. Next, make sure you're monitoring your credit. Almost all credit card companies these days offer free looks at your credit, or you can utilize Credit Karma like Jenna recommended earlier. And these things, they'll notify you if your social security number is being used to open a new account. So keep an eye on your credit card and your bank statements to ensure that there's no unusual activity. Report any fraudulent transactions and freeze your cards if you notice anything strange. If you do receive bank or credit card statements in the mail, or you have physical tax forms, you want to make sure that you're disposing of these things properly. Shred them or tear them up into a lot of little pieces if you don't have a shredder. And make sure to do the same with those pre-qualified credit offers that I was mentioning. You don't want anyone else opening up credit cards in your name. And lastly, utilize the tools that are out there. There's so many great ones that can help you protect your data and yourself. As I said, password managers, great, so you can create safe, strong passwords. Also consider turning on multi-factor authentication for your accounts. So for example, have your bank send you a code via text or email when you log in from a new device. Protect yourself from viruses with antivirus software and prevent data mining with tools like Delete Me. Of course, there are infinite tips for identity protection, like not logging into your financial institutions on a public Wi-Fi, but these are just a few helpful reminders. And lastly, financial literacy is a skill that requires practice and continued learning. There are countless podcasts, books, articles that cover this topic and cover it well. So here are a few that are great. NPR's Planet Money podcast, Choose FI podcast, so that's Choose Financial Independence, and Get Good with Money, 10 Steps to Becoming Financially Whole by Tiffany Aliche, and that's a book. So tons of resources out there to continue learning, and that wraps it up for us. So I'm going to pass it back to Maxine for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, there was a ton of fantastic information that the three of you provided. So again, I did want to just remind people that if you ever need to reference any of this information, there will be a recording that you can go through and you can get some more information in depth. Now, we do have a couple of minutes for questions, so I did want to get to some of those. The first one is going to be, I believe, for Rachel. And it was going to ask, can you add volunteer work on your resume? Is that something that you can add to that as well as cover letters?
Yes, absolutely. That's a wonderful question. Volunteer work is definitely something that can be added, but of course, then that follows into should it be added? So it can sometimes be tricky to determine what you want to do there. The advice that I like to give job seekers is if your volunteer work reveals anything along the lines of political, religious, or other things that tend to be a hot button type of affiliation, something that might offend somebody for whatever reason, then I would avoid putting it on. So if you volunteer at, for example, a soup kitchen and you help to deliver meals to the homeless, or if you read to the elderly, or if you're volunteering at a children's hospital, those are really safe things because nobody's going to object to any of that. But if your volunteer work somehow could cross the lines into personality specific bias, then I would be careful about including it. If it's related to your field, 100% yes. If it's not, again, just be careful. Make sure you're not introducing yourself and opening the door for the opportunity to the employer to look at you through a biased lens.
Awesome. And then kind of similarly, which we don't have to get into too much today since we don't have too much time, but someone asked if we had a sample cover letter. And for that, I would really recommend going to our YouTube channel. We actually have a playlist simply titled Webinars for Job Seekers. And we have 5 different webinars in there, some of which specifically go over a bunch of tips and tricks for cover letters and resumes. So again, just find our YouTube playlist, which you can do right down there if you go to our YouTube channel, and that will be really helpful for you, I do believe. The next question was possibly for Jessica. Is there such thing as doing grad school too late, or is there a disadvantage to focusing on your career before going back to school?
That's an awesome question. And I think, everybody's situation is different, everybody's field is different, but I would say it's never too late to go to grad school. It's never too late to learn something new and, go after what you're passionate about. Maybe it could be a great idea for you to go into your field, get a little bit of experience and see, do I really need to go to grad school, or is there a path forward for me without it? I think that is a great option. I also think going to grad school now, right away is a great option. Again, everybody's situation is different. It's going to be what's best for you and what your goals are. But short answer, I don't think it's ever too late to go to grad school.
Yeah, perfect. I completely agree. And it looks like that's actually all the questions that we have, and I know we're coming up to time. So again, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. I hope you found some of that information really helpful, and feel free to follow us on our social so you can have an idea of when we're doing more webinars and other topics that you think might be interesting. But thank you, Rachel, Jenna, and Jessica for your time today, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maxine. Have a great day, everyone.